Good Tuesday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock and time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. It is also time for NFL teams to get down to the 53-man roster limit. Browns did that before they went out to Berea for a practice this afternoon. Here's a look at the guys that were initially released, let go from that roster. No real surprises. Jalen Darden, Demetric Felton, Hassan Hall. All those guys could be back as part of the practice squad. Tanner McAllister, you see Mitchell Payton, the tight end. Kellen Mond will likely be back on the practice squad. Lonnie Phelps could as well. Isaiah Thomas, Tommy Togiai. Austin Watkins, part of the initial release, as was Cade York. We told you that. Additionally, these contracts were terminated. Michael Dunn, Tristan Hill, Maurice Hurst, John Kelly Jr. And also Michael Woods was put on the reserve non-football injury list with his injury that he suffered while working out over the summer. Let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Daily, as well as Casey. When you look at this, Kanasic, Alex Wright could be put on injured reserve, and then that would open the door to likely be Maurice Hurst and Michael Dunn being brought back. Those are the two that kind of jump out to me. Your thoughts when you looked at this?
I think that's the obvious answers. I was thinking that Maurice Hurst had a good shot to make it outright, but he was also having guaranteed money. So if there was a handshake deal behind the scenes where, you know, you step off the roster, you clear waivers, we'll give you a little more money just to give them some more flexibility. And the Dunn thing, I think that was kind of the conclusion yesterday, although he said he didn't have a conversation like that, but I can't see them. I'm just looking around the league of other guards that were cut. He would by far be the most high profile.
So, you know, he could end up getting more money to go somewhere else in a spot on the 53, but I think those are two guys that the Browns would like back. Let's take a look at the 53-man roster as it is currently constituted. So on the offensive side of the ball, quarterbacks, you got Sean and DTR. The running backs, Chubb, Ford, Strong. You see the wide receivers. Again, Donovan Peoples-Jones probably handling punt duties for now. Harrison Bryant, the third tight end. And again, I'm with you. I believe that Dunn, they would like Dunn back as that backup guard. Defensive side of the ball, starting the secondary. Pretty strong group there, a significant upgrade. When you look at that, and then you look at the front, the linebackers in the front seven, if you will. Smith, Garrett, that's a significant upgrade from a year ago. You look at the linebacking core, and there are guys that are going to be specifically special team guys. We'll get into that in a minute. But you look at it, Diabate and Hickman, rookie undrafted free agents making the squad, in addition to DeAnthony Bell making it. Those are three guys, and up until this year, under Andrew Berry, there'd been just one, DeAnthony Bell.
Yeah, and that one came out of nowhere last year. This one felt a little more obvious. You know, these were guys who should have been drafted. You know, they just happened to wind up in Cleveland. Diabate was paid like a fifth rounder, and they showed out. And I think it sends a good message to the locker room that your draft pick doesn't always just hold your place. Like if you come in and you play and you excel and you develop, that there could be a spot for you on the 53-man roster. And Diabate and Hickman are both proof of that.
The other thing is this roster's it's in a different spot. You know, the first couple of years they were building towards something. Now it's kind of win time. Who are some guys that you think could be headed, re-signed for the practice squad, or guys that the Browns would want back on the practice squad?
It would start with Austin Watkins. That's where the conversation's going to start. But he put enough good stuff on tape. Don't be surprised if a wide receiver needy team like Tennessee or Detroit snatch him up. You know, but there's several on there. If you look at players, you know, like obviously the defensive tackle situation, you might see someone like Togiai kind of revert back to practice squad. That could be an option. Mike Hartley Jr., wide receiver. With Mond, I could go either way. I mean, I get why they would do it, but it's not a real needle mover for me. If they were to go on and bring someone else and they think they could develop to have a higher ceiling, it wouldn't, you know, it doesn't really matter to me. I know they need one, But I know one I've been seeing a lot is, what if Cade York clears waivers? I would just stay away from that, man. I just think that there's so much bad faith in that direction that if he comes back, might make it just awkward, really, you know? I think if you need to get a practice squad kicker, there are plenty of candidates that got cut today.
The other thing is that Cade York probably just needs a fresh start from his perspective. But, Kevin Stefanski kept saying how talented he is, and kickers tend to have a history of figuring things out after they get cut by a team or two. So if that's the way they go, that's fine. I'm with you, though. If I'm Cade York, I probably am looking somewhere else. Some roster cuts from other teams that are at least intriguing. Christian Kirksey, cut by the Texans. Kenyon Drake, cut by the Colts. A lot of running backs. Miles Gaskin, not Myles Garrett. Relax, folks. Miles Gaskins from the Dolphins. Bradley Roby, that's a guy, slot corner, has had some success. That's intriguing. James Robinson from the Giants. Trey Sermon from the Eagles. I don't know that the Browns are going to tweak a whole lot other than, quarterback. I think they're probably happy with running back, although Trey Sermon may intrigue them. They got to look up close at what he does for a couple days of joint practices.
Yeah, those are intriguing running backs, but the Browns have already made the move for Pierre Strong, so I don't see them flipping anything on their roster to make something happen there. Some of those guys were to revert through waivers. I think that you might see someone get snagged to the practice squad. But out of all those names, I would probably kick the tires on Bradley Roby. I think, he's not going to get any playing time off the rip here, and that's probably not very intriguing to him. But I think he would upgrade your room. I would trade Bradley Roby for A.J. Green in a heartbeat. I think I would make that move. Another player to consider, and I have no wish to butcher the young man's name, but Albert O from the Broncos. That would be someone I'd be intrigued with.
A few minutes ago, he got traded to the Eagles. He was on my list initially. The Eagles traded for him, so you and I were thinking alike. But the Eagles were thinking ahead, too. And I'm with you. That's a big, talented young kid that can catch the ball, and he's got the size to block. But the Eagles were thinking the same way. They went out and traded for him.
Well, that Barry would have been right behind Howie. They're pretty much in lockstep. So if the Eagles were looking at him, you better guarantee the Browns were too.
Yep, I'm with you. All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time today.
Hi, this is Rico. I'm truly happy with Andrew Berry. He has finally figured out that even if his draft picks aren't performing up to par, he will now cut them or trade them without hesitation. I know as a GM, it's tough to admit your mistakes, but not trying to rectify those mistakes is even a worse practice. He had identified the problem areas, and he is now trying to upgrade them. Barry is now showing a greater sense of urgency than he has ever shown before. And I'm truly satisfied with him and his approach to this crucial season. Thanks. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Casey, I can't argue. I think, again, I alluded to this earlier. I think it's where the roster is. You build and you're trying to develop players, and now DeShaun Watson for a full year. You've upgraded the defensive line. You've brought in a defensive coordinator who gives it to it's the time to win is now. It's go time.
Yeah, it's also the evolution of Andrew Berry as a general manager. He's young, man. This is his fourth year on the job. And as he evolves, the roster evolves, and that comes together. And that's where we're seeing it right now, to recognize their winning window. In years past, you could you could posture a little bit and give a player time to develop. Now those players, if you're not contributing on special teams, if you do not have an active role in the roster, there's not a spot for you on the roster because of where the team is. All their chips are in the middle of the table. And with that comes the win now attitude. And at that point, you got to do moves like he's been made over the last couple of days. And it kind of caught us off guard because up until recently, he hadn't made those moves yet. But we knew we were going to learn a lot about Andrew Berry over this process, because he's going to have to move on from guys that he brought in. In the past, he was moving on from the past regime's guys. But we're into this now. We're in year 4. And that means he's got to, if there is a mistake made, you have to move on from it and learn from it. And you're seeing that right now in Andrew Berry.
And again, it'll be cyclical. Hopefully they win, an AFC championship, go to a Super Bowl, maybe even win a Super Bowl. Then you go back to where you have to turn over a portion of the roster and develop it. But the moves tell you they think it's time to win. The other thing that strikes me, you've got Mike Ford, Matt Adams, Jordan Kanasic, DeAnthony Bell. Those are guys that their main contributions are going to be special teams. I don't know that you always had that the past couple of years.
Yeah, you might have one guy in the past. Now you see a little core. And how much of that is Bubba Ventrone's influence when they brought him in and listened to him, what he needs to operate his system? But you're seeing a collection of these guys now who are just going to be special teams contributors. But you also have to think about those UDFAs and Mahmoud Diabate and Ronnie Hickman. They're going to have to cut their teeth there as well, So Ventrone has a solid little core to work from this year. And we'll see how it evolves and if it relates to success on the field.
Again, you identify the weaknesses. The weaknesses were the coverage teams, the kicking game, and the defense. And they went out and at least tried to address them aggressively. All right, before we head to break, Browns back on the practice field, out in Berea getting ready. They have the weekend off. Some news from out in Berea. Marquise Goodwin returns to the practice field, as does Jerome Ford and Harrison Bryant. DeShaun Watson, though, not practicing. He is sick. Denzel Ward in the concussion protocol. Elijah Moore also not on the practice field as of yet, undisclosed as to why that is. The concern for me there is Denzel Ward with the concussion. That's one of the reasons I might be inclined to kick the tires on Bradley Roby. Denzel I think it's his third or his fourth, and you become concerned.
Yeah, I believe it's his fourth, and you have to be concerned. Head injuries are serious, and they're not something you can diagnose by looking at it. It's all internal and how a player responds to things like light and just different things. He's a young guy, man, and to have head injuries at this stage in his life, that's got to be scary for him and his family as well. And how much of that can be mitigated? Like how much can he change his style of play to keep his head out of collisions? It's tough ask in this sport, man. There's car crashes happening on every single play, except there's no car. It's definitely concerning. We don't know the severity of it, but we're not going to know the severity of it. Hopefully this is mostly precautionary and they're going to let him come all the way back. But if he's not available week one, I wouldn't be surprised.
So we are also told that Elijah Moore's sickness along with DeShaun Watson, so that's good news, nothing too serious. Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, plus talk a little bit about the good, the bad, and the ugly from the preseason. Sports for CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Huge Browns fan, Southeast Ohio, lifelonger since '81. I was wanting to know what you guys think about all the injuries that the Browns always have. It's been like the last couple of years that they've had issues with injuries, and nobody's actually looking at like strength and conditioning coaches. I think that they should be looking at that. Let me know what you guys think. Overall, because something needs to be done about that, I feel. I think they're using probably too much weight. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Bye.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Casey, a couple things. I do believe that they are trying to figure that out. They're probably doing a lot of looking at why, the type of injuries, and the type of training they're doing behind the scenes. The other thing is they've changed, since COVID, they've changed the rules of practice. And I think that probably affects it a little bit as well. I think what the caller's point out is Browns seem to have more injuries than any. It may be bad luck. It may be cyclical.
Yeah, I think you should examine everything, but to put all the blame on one thing, I think, is not seeing the big picture. For the strength and conditioning coaches, like the players do 90% of their strength and conditioning away from the facility when they're training in the off season, and they might have a protocol they're supposed to follow, but at the end of the day, those coaches aren't there following that. So, you see all kinds of stuff happen. Maybe a player comes in with an injury, they have to kind of hide because they won't get paid if that's discovered before they get on the field. And like you said, they've changed the way they practice, the way they go about their business, and you're seeing soft tissue injuries. And yeah, it feels like the Browns just have more injuries than other teams. But if you're a fan of another team, probably feels the same way. Probably feels like it's always us. I know we sat here 2 weeks ago watching the Eagles game, and we were watching the Eagles just drop out. I mean, you're just seeing guys get carted off and on stretchers, and you made it through that game feeling pretty lucky. Well, then this game happens against the Chiefs, and you don't feel so lucky. You know what I mean? It's just, like you said, it's cyclical, and whatever, they're going to do all the science behind it, try to figure out what they can. But at the end of the day, it's a violent sport, and things happen. So the best you can just try to mitigate the injuries, but they're always going to be there. The injury rate for players in this league is 100%. It's just about the severity of the injury.
So this from CBSSports.com. Good, bad, and ugly from each preseason finale. For the Browns, the good, the interception party for the Browns defense forced 3 interceptions, 2 pick sixes. The bad and the ugly, something we just alluded to, the injuries. You know, Jakeem Grant, very first play. Denzel Ward. Kinasic is another one. That's a special teams guy that was going to get some snaps. Casey, the defense has looked really good. You saw the defensive line being aggressive. You saw in this game now you see what they liked about Juan Thornhill. You saw some of the pressure creating throws that just they don't have all day to throw. Go figure.
Yeah, my good would have been the starting defense. Period. They looked awesome out there, creating havoc up front, just getting pressure, collapsing the pocket from the middle. You know, Zadarius Smith was having his way out there. Ogbo's coming fast off the edge. Just what you want to see. They're doing all that without Myles Garrett. You know what I mean? So that's a good sign. And then you see the proof of concept in the secondary of the way Jim Schwartz wants to play, that cover one man style where the DBs are more aggressive and safeties are allowed to roam the middle like Thornhill, and that's exactly what you want to see. So for the good, the starting defense. For the bad, obviously the injuries. I mean, but I would also say the whole backup secondary, that was pretty terrible. It was an ugly sight out there. You know, you even had a player in Biggers who gets a pick six, and you could still say he had a terrible game. I mean, it was that bad out there. A player like A.J. Green, who's still on this roster, he looked lost out there, and that was against backups. It was a very disconcerting effort by the second teamers in the secondary.
Yeah, it was almost it's like, okay, and then it's like, boy, we hope nobody gets banged up because. All right, before we go to break, predicting top 100 players this season by ESPN.com. Number 13, they say Myles Garrett, new coordinator Jim Schwartz, revamping the Browns defense, has already said he'll be bringing a minimum of 5 pass rushers on every down. That could create more playmaking opportunities for Garrett, who's had to face the highest double team rate, over 25%, any edge rusher the past 3 seasons. 26, Nick Chubb. Browns revamping their offense around DeShaun Watson, going from tight end heavy schemes more wide open. That could create even more running lanes for Nick Chubb, who averaged a whopping 6.1 yards per carry out of 3 receivers set last season. Second best in the NFL. And 79, Joel Bitonio, 6th among guards, pass blocking win rate 95% last year. Can also pave the way in the running game. 5-time Pro Bowler. Could thrive even more in the Browns' new offense. And none of these guys have played in the preseason, nor should they have. Let's start with Garrett. That's a guy I'm anxious to see. He has got to be chomping at the bit to get out and play in this style of defense.
Yeah, there's 1,700 players in the NFL, and Myles Garrett's predicted to be number 13. That's pretty high up there, and it still feels too low. You know, I don't like putting unrealistic expectations on players, but he should be in line for the defensive MVP, period. You're looking at a player who can get, I would say, 18 sacks to 20 sacks. I think that's where my expectations are. I'm sure his are much higher, but just given what we've seen already with additions, which are night and day from last year, what they've been able to do to that defensive front with, just even without Myles playing, just to see what they're able to do when you add a player like Myles, man, the sky's the limit for him this year.
You look at Nick Chubb, I agree. I think he's going to have he may get fewer carries and have more yards.
Yeah. Think about what he's been able to do with the odds stacked against him. Just all the personnel the ability to teams have had to just stack the box. They're not going to have that now. They might have it at times and in pockets, but as this offense starts to open up and they start to see success through the air, they're going to have to lighten that box up. And for a player like Nick Chubb, who's already been historically excellent per carry, that's only going to go up. And then I think he's going to be more involved in the passing game, so he might end up with less carries. But if you supplement those with 2 to 3 more receptions a game, and plus the efficiency he's going to be able to have, I mean, I don't, like I said, I don't like putting unrealistic expectations, but Nick Chubb could have a career year this year.
Yeah, I am very anxious to see him in a more opened offense. And Joel Bitonio is a guy that doesn't get a lot. By and large, the interior guys, the centers and guards, don't get a lot of notoriety. Joel Bitonio deserves what notoriety he gets.
It's so hard to get love if you're an offensive guard. There's no metric you can point to. You don't have a sack total. You don't have touchdowns scored. You don't have the things that on the outside you look at. But there's the consistency he's had has got him the success that he has now, and is garnering all the attention that he's getting. And to even crack the top 100, you know, playing interior offensive line, that's something by itself, you know. And of course, we around the team really love Joel, and he's the longest tenured player, and it's a real feel good story. But the respect he's getting outside of the team's focus, I think that speaks to the level of player that he is.
Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk a little bit about the Browns' new kicker. Sports4CLE, will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave Frank from Cleveland. One quick question for you. I mean, we got this guy from San Diego, Dustin Hopkins. Can he kick in elements? That's the main question. I would have rather went out and got Robbie Gould or Mason Crosby, but I'm not sure. I'm no GM, but great show. Love you, brother. Be safe, and as always, it's a jungle out there, Dave. Be good. Bye.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. So Robbie Gould's 40, Crosby's 38, Dustin Hopkins will turn 33 October 1st, so a little younger. Hopkins is 16 of 18 on game-winning or tying field goals, final 2 minutes of the game or in overtime in his career. One of his misses a 62-yarder. Besides injury, he has been a day one starter, NFL kicker every year since 2015. The other thing to keep in mind, he has been in San Diego for a couple of years. Before that, most of his career was in Washington. So there is a history of kicking in somewhat inclement weather. So Casey, not a guy that's been used to kicking in the sunshine all the time.
Yeah, and I think the element stuff gets overblown. I mean, I get it. There's wind that comes off the lake, but we don't see opposing kickers have much of an issue when they come in there. You know, I think that you just, for someone like, if you're a kicker and you want your kicker above all things to be clutch, and I think if Hopkins has demonstrated anything throughout his career is that he is clutch. And the juxtaposition of like why they went and got Cade York, they went and got this guy because they thought he could have a high ceiling, but it turned out his floor was lower than they could deal with. You know, I think you get a player like Hopkins, and he's going to make the layups. He's not going to blow those. You know, he might not have the leg that's going to kick a 58-yarder, but with the defense you have, I wouldn't try to kick a 58-yarder. I would try to pin an offense inside the 5 and let your defense do that work for you. You know, so they went and got a guy who's just going to keep it on the fairway. He's going to hit his layups, and I think that's all this team needs right now.
Yeah, and again, he 45, 49 and in, over 90%, 50%, 50 plus. And I'm with you. I don't see them taking a whole lot of risk kicking the longer field goals. This is also kind of interesting. So this is from Warren Sharp Football. Combined lead after the first quarter in 2022. Bengals were number 1 in the league. They were plus 42. Chiefs plus 36. Lions plus 34. Browns were 5th at plus 29. What that tells you is they were leading a lot in the first quarter, and it kind of fell apart.
Yeah, I think that speaks to how good they are on opening drives. They score touchdowns a lot of their opening drives. For whatever reason, they get in that big lull from the second quarter to the midway through the third, and teams catch up, and then it's a different game. But Stefanski's historically been good on scripted drives. I don't know how you transfer that to getting, from your second through your sixth drive, but you have to do this. This is something that's disparaging. If you're at plus 29 points after the first quarter, but you still end the season with a losing record, something's off there.
Well, and again, it could be you don't have the faith in the guy that's playing quarterback to make the adjust. It could be you stick to what you're good at because you're concerned about the guy that's touching the ball every play.
Yeah, limitations will do that to you. You feel handcuffed to a certain style of play, and if a team is able to take that away from you, maybe you don't have anything to pivot to. I think that's a contingency. And that's something that Stefanski has to look inward at. Because now he has a quarterback without limitations. He needs to kind of figure out how he's going to pivot in those situations, because teams are still going to take something away from you. It's what do you go to as your plan B?
Yeah. All right. So when you look at this roster for the Browns, what areas do you think could get tweaked? Would you like to? We already mentioned Hurst and Dunn, and we're talking about probably the 4th or 5th defensive tackle and the third or 4th guard.
Yeah, and it's the same situation all over the roster. The things that you would change would be bottom of the roster, stuff like the last corner. If you consider that to be A.J. Green, would you upgrade that if you could? Personally, I would, but it's not a dire necessity because it's so far down your depth chart. We also don't know how Jerome Ford's going to respond from his injury. We'll see in due time. They've already added a Pierre Strong, but if Ford isn't able to get to where they need him to be, they might need to supplement that room with something else as well.
Can you see him trying to upgrade any areas? Are there any areas that you think he tries to upgrade? Here's where my thing is, and nobody jumped out. A veteran quarterback would be somebody that I would be interested in. Yeah,
you can see that definitely. It's going to be interesting because it's going to be dependent upon how the schedule plays out. Because I don't think they're going to do anything rash right now. But as the trade deadline comes up, if they're in that position, you might see a crazier move that isn't on the table right now. You know what I mean? Like for another defensive tackle or just anything that they're lacking. But, you could see a veteran quarterback be added to this if things get serious. And say if DeShaun has to miss a game and they see that DTR isn't quite ready, you can see a move there. So there's a couple aspects, but I think it all depends on how the season plays out.
What did the Cade York move say to you about where they're at and how they're approaching this year?
Just the realization they couldn't allow an easily replaceable position to drag an entire locker room of 53 men down. Like we can be irate, everyone around it could be mad at the situation, but all that matters is what happens internally. And internally, I don't think they can look those 53 players in the eyes and know that they're selling them short, but not giving them something because I don't care how talented you are. Games come down to a kick. That happens a lot. And if you have a guy you can't count on and have confidence in, then you're setting yourself up to fail.
The other thing is so today after practice, Kevin Stefanski did say they would like to add Cade York back to the practice squad. So it's not surprising because when you heard him say really, really talented guy, what he's saying is we got to see it in games before we can feel really good about it.
Yeah, if you're Cade York, though, I think you take a timeout, you go talk to a sports psychologist, you build yourself up, you regroup, and you try this again at a later date. I don't think the continuation of this is going to do him any good for the long term of his career. And I know his fans were selfish because we think about our team, but he's a very young man and he still has a shot at making an NFL career. I think if he just kind of goes right back into the fray, I think you're going to see more of the same. It's just only going to get worse.
The other thing that since the last time we talked, what did you think of them adding Strong? It's a guy that, was an earlier pick than Jerome Ford in the draft. and the speed is there.
Yeah, I think it signals a few things. One of which is this front office, they trust their evaluations. They obviously graded this player out, and had he been available where Jerome Ford was, he might already be on the team. And they see an opportunity to add him. I think that's something that you to expect from this regime. If they go to acquire a player, they're not always going to get a splash name. If there's a guy like just how we saw with the Elijah Moore trade, a guy that they already had done the evaluations on, they were very high on, if he becomes available, they'll bring him right into the fold.
Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Pound Daily, as always. Great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Anytime, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out. Really good stuff with Dawg Pound Daily. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus joins us. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Craig Carton, Antonio Cromartie, former NFL player, on what they see from the Browns if they think they can beat the Bengals in Week 1.
This rivalry between Cleveland and Cincinnati has always been talking trash. So, like, for your quarterback to come out and say, hey, it's going to be fireworks, I'm excited to see because, one, you have a full offseason for DeShaun Watson to get with his receivers, to be around his receivers, be around in this offense. And, like you say, the defense is what it is.
Very good.
You know, you got, what's the kid name? Denzel Ward, the DB. I mean, so you're looking at what they have up front, what they have in the secondary, what they got offensively, and what he can do. And if he returns back to form or even better where he was in Houston, this division is going to be off the chain.
Look, I think the Bengals could actually start off the year 0-2, and you've got a situation now in Cincinnati where you're going up against a division rival that's got a very, very good defense and does get to the quarterback, right? And you've got your franchise still nursing a calf injury. So Week 1, you know, and I know the Bengals are very slight favorites by 1.5 points, even though the game's in Cleveland. I would not be shocked if the Browns win Game 1.
With that, let's welcome in Brad Spielberger, Pro Football Focus. Brad, I thought that immediately about Joe Burrow. Jim Schwartz is just going to wind up that defensive line and just say, go get him.
Absolutely, and especially, you know, not just Burrow himself, but also the offensive line. Question marks across the unit for Cincinnati, where Orlando Brown making his first start with the unit. You obviously have to establish chemistry with your line mates, and all those things are going to gel over the course of the season, but obviously not right away. And then at right tackle, Lyle Collins got placed on the PUP list today, which is somewhat expected, but nevertheless, Jonah Williams, a good player. Yes, he played right tackle in college at Alabama in about 2017, I want to say. But, you know, making his first NFL start at right tackle as well. good luck with Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith, Ogbakoronkwo, etc. in Week 1.
Yeah, and if you're the Bengals, you can't afford not to have Joe Burrow in there for an extended period of time. I mean, that's you saw that. He makes that team go.
Absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, I think you saw last year even he had the appendix going into the season. He was obviously horrible against the Pittsburgh Steelers right out of the gate. Had 4 interceptions in that game, but then as soon as he did get healthy and settle in, he was fine. I think the cap is okay. I know Jamar Chase made comments and others have as well. I think he will be close to fully healthy, but it's more about he hasn't planted on it. He hasn't thrown off of it with full force in a little bit of time. So, the Browns game is going to be kind of getting back in rhythm, and I don't think you want to get back in rhythm against that Jim Schwartz defensive line.
Yeah, that is not one that you want to face if you're a quarterback that is somewhat hobbled. All right. This is from Pro Football Focus. The question was, who will win the AFC North? And you and some of your colleagues split decisions here. You go with the Browns, Sam Monson, Steelers, Trevor Sikkema with the Bengals, Gordon going with the Baltimore Ravens. Tell me why. Now, you're going to be hugely popular with our fan base here. What do you like about the Browns? What makes you think this is the team that can take the division title for the first time since it was the AFC Central? That's how long it's been.
Yeah, I think right off the top, I want to say that's the only division in the entire NFL where the 4 of us all had different answers. And I think that speaks to the AFC North and how competitive it is across all 4 teams. I have no issue with any of the other picks there. But, yeah, for me with Cleveland, it comes back to, yes, this is a big if, but if DeShaun Watson is the guy he was back in 2020 and before then this roster to me, remove quarterbacks from every roster. I think the Browns have a top 5 roster in the NFL. And then if you drop in DeShaun Watson into that equation, you're talking about, on paper, one of the best units in the entire NFL. So a lot has to gel, a lot of things have to happen, but for me, I feel like among all teams in the NFL this offseason, they were the one that said, here are our issues. Here's what's stopping us from being a playoff team, a competitive team. And they went out and addressed every last one of them. I'm obviously very, very high on the team.
All right. This is something you will like to see then. This is from CBS Sports.com. DeShaun Watson career completion heat map. You look at it. On the left is 2017-2020 with the Texans. On the right, 2022 with the Browns. So he threw more deep balls, both sideline and especially down the middle. That would be, your seam routes to the tight ends often than he did in 2022. I think there's 2 things. One, the Browns didn't have the personnel to throw the ball deep. You didn't have Marquise Goodwin. You didn't have Elijah Moore. And 2, he was running Jacoby Brissett's offense when he came back.
Yeah, I think it was just too much to adjust to, and that is more Brissett's game. I think Cedric Tillman as well. I mean, you're bringing in guys that can win downfield. Obviously, Donovan Peoples-Jones can do that and was there last year. But like you said, you bring in more pieces that have, quick speed at the line, can get downfield in a hurry. I also think Watson's going to be behind one of the better offensive lines he's ever played with. Yes, he had Laramie Tunsil in Houston, but the rest of the unit had a lot of question marks across the board. So, yeah, I think you need to get back to that, though, because that is how he won in Houston. Was you wait around a little bit, you evade some pressure, and you hit those home run shots. That was his game. That's why Will Fuller was Will Fuller. It's how DeAndre Hopkins had so much production. I think Stefanski needs to be more comfortable with that, but I think the signal that he is in the personnel they've gone after for this offense.
The other thing is you saw a little bit of that in that Chiefs preseason game on that play to Cooper. That I saw that, and I'm like, that's the guy that they traded for.
Exactly right. You start to see little flashes of this is the Deshaun Watson of old and how it can work and gel with this unit. Yeah, I think there was just also, we talk about the live speed and the reps and the rust and all of those things. Trying to avoid getting hit and being afraid of getting hit. He was near the top of the NFL in sacks taken pretty much every year of his career, and I think he probably will be pretty high again. And that's not a knock on him, it's his style, but you have to, ease your way into that and play through that as opposed to getting dropped into week 12 where these guys talk a lot about building up a callus and, getting used to getting hit and all those things. That applies to quarterbacks as much as anybody else. They don't get tackled a lot. They get hit on almost every drop back, once they've let go of the football.
Yeah, there are basically between 5 and 7 guys trying to take their head off every time they drop back to throw the football. All right, before we go to break, a lot of kickers moving around in trades, actually, throughout the NFL. So today, there was Nick Folk getting traded to the Titans. Will Lutz went to the Bengals. And, of course, the Browns traded for Dustin Hopkins from the Chargers. Moving on from 4th-round pick Cade York. What are your thoughts just about the Browns, making that trade, waiving Cade York, 4th-round pick, trading the 7th-round pick next year to get Dustin Hopkins?
Yeah, I know he was phenomenal in college, but this is why you just shouldn't be using draft capital outside of a 7th-round pick to begin with on a kicker, because especially when you're Cleveland, look, you have no ability to be patient whatsoever. You're not going to, maybe he gets back on the practice squad and they work it out, but I have a feeling a team might put in a waiver claim to see what they have, because he is a very talented football player. But this is the issue, is the Browns, they were kind of backed into a corner and had no choice. They're saying, week 1 against the Bengals, we're in a do-or-die season. I think a lot of people in that building are probably coaching or whatever for their job. You have to do this. So I have no issue with it. I had an issue with the pick in the first place, but Hopkins has been solid over the last couple of years. He's missed 1 field goal inside of 40 yards over the last 3 seasons. So at least he's solid. He'll hit the easy stuff. Ideally, you're scoring touchdowns, not kicking field goals anyway. But yeah, that's why you should use a 4th-round pick last year on a defensive tackle or a safety or something else.
Is it does it tell you again that it's win now? I mean, this is win now. The only move that kind of doesn't tell me that is you have a rookie 5th-round pick as your backup quarterback.
Yeah, no, it is, though. To me, it is a move of just like, we're not going to mess around with this. We'd probably love to keep him, see if we could play through it, but we just can't. That's true, though. But to DTR's credit, they had options in place, but Kellen Mond, he was just simply better than Kellen Mond. So I see what you're saying, but he's also a 24, almost 25-year-old rookie. It's a little bit different, but that is fair. We have seen them spend money on the position. We do see some teams that view themselves as contenders make sure they go out and sign more expensive veteran backups. But, I think it's because they have a lot of faith in him as a player, and he kind of earned that job. That wasn't maybe the plan going in, but he earned it.
Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk a little bit about some of the surprise cuts from around the NFL. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey guys, love the show. Watching Austin Watkins playing in the preseason, wearing that number 80, reminds me of the latest number 80 that was on the Browns. Bringing that poise and that juice, if you know what I mean. Tell me what you think of that comparison. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Brad, Watkins a little bit bigger, but the Browns are hoping to get him through to the practice squad. I won't be surprised if a team that is wide receiver needy, for lack of a better term, takes a shot on him.
Yeah, I mean, when you lead the preseason in receiving yards, doesn't matter who the competition is. You're second in receptions. You make some players miss in the open field. You're at risk of getting claimed. And it's an interesting comparison. I think, like you said, a little bit bigger, and I think because of that, maybe a little bit less sharp on his routes and his breaks. Kind of has some rounded off turns and things of that nature. But things you probably could clean up, get better at as you progress along in your NFL career. And he did, create separation, make some nice plays, make a contested catch or two. He's a good good football player. I was a little surprised. Not a lot of shocks today. I don't know if I would say shocked, but I was surprised to see his name come across the wire today. He certainly earned an NFL spot somewhere, and if he is a practice squad guy, it'd be a nice guy to have in Cleveland. Maybe you elevate him when injuries happen, things like that. A good thing to have in the back pocket.
Yeah, I think they liked what they saw, but you do the numbers game, and a lot of times, you're talking about the 6th, 7th wide receiver. You better be able to play special teams because you only get to dress 53. So you need to be able to do something on game day, I guess, and that's what worked against him was special teams. He didn't really have the build for it.
People forget a lot of the time, and it matters. It's extremely impactful. It swings football games. And yeah, if you want to be the 6th receiver, the 6th corner, the 4th tight end, so on and so forth, that's how you earn your way onto the roster. Being a good gunner or being a good, kick protector, punt protector, whatever the case may be, that's how you get on there. And it's valuable. It's important. It should not be overlooked. And that does work against some maybe better, football players, so to speak. But these teams have to look out for every unit.
What were some of the surprises from around the league? There wasn't any that were like jaw-dropping, but who were some guys that surprised you that they got cut?
I think maybe the biggest came in right at 4 o'clock, and that was Bailey Zappi with the New England Patriots. The Patriots now have only Mac Jones on the roster, nobody else. Maybe they'll go out and sign a Cleveland Browns fellow player, Brian Hoyer, for the 15th time to be a New England Patriot. So not really sure what the plan there is, but probably Zappi. I mean, he was competent last year. We just talked about, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Yeah, Zappi's a sophomore 4th-round pick versus a rookie 5th-rounder, but I don't know, maybe he's a potential option if Cleveland finds him interesting. I just thought, look, are his physical talents otherworldly? No. Am I shocked? I guess no, but fairly surprised because I think he proved he knows how to read defenses, how to play football at the National Football League level. It was interesting.
Are there any names out there that you think the Browns are intrigued by that hit the waiver wire? Always tweaking, the back half of the roster is Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry. Are there any that kind of raised your eyebrows a little bit?
Let's say one that I think it would intrigue me potentially is Bradley Roby, the cornerback with the New Orleans Saints, just because you have a very, very young secondary, in particular with those 3 corner spots, all guys that have been drafted the last couple of years. I guess about 5 years for Denzel Ward, but nevertheless. And, Roby can play on the outside and in the slot at a high level and could be kind of your backup at all positions on the defense, from a cornerback perspective. So he's maybe a name that intrigues me a little bit just because you can sell him on being on a competitive team, a good football team, and he can really say, hey, look, if anyone gets hurt, whether it's slot corner or outside, you're the next man up. Maybe that intrigues him as well.
Were you surprised? There were a number of trades this deadline, and that's kind of becoming more and more. Back, 5-6 years ago, you rarely saw any trades come deadline time. Now you're seeing a fair amount of them.
Yeah, I think it's the NFL getting smarter and more efficient and recognizing in the marketplace you don't have to lose players for nothing. And if you're an interested team, you don't have to bid against, several other teams for a player's services. You catch wind he's going to get released and give up a 2025 7th-round pick for the right to get this player on your roster. And the other team, obviously, instead of getting nothing, gets a future pick to maybe, use on a special teams player or what have you. So, yeah, I'm not surprised it's becoming more and more of a trend, but you're right. We did see a bunch of that this offseason, or these last 48 hours, I should say. And I like to pick the player-for-player swaps as well. Hey, we're deep at tackle, you're deep at running back, let's make a swap. I think it is smart, and I think it's only going to optimize and make every team better because it's just, it's players going where they actually are needed.
Before we go to break, since you mentioned it, Pierre Strong, what did you see with him? I know you probably got a good look at him. He had a pretty high draft grade. I think he was projected to be a 3rd-rounder, ended up going in the 4th.
Yeah, a good pass catcher. I think that is kind of the role you're seeing right now. I saw Jerome Ford return to practice today. Look, Chubb and Ford, both of them, they can catch the ball, but it's not necessarily their game. Maybe more Fords than Chubb's, where Strong is shifty. He's a little bit smaller. He's not going to have the, tackle breaking ability and running through contact of those first 2 guys, but is shifty out of the backfield, has good hands, fluid pass catcher. I think they're going to like using him. Demetric Felton gets moved on from today. You can see some of that in his game. Not quite, a receiver / running back, but that is his game, and I think he's pretty good at it.
Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus and I are going to step aside, take one more timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, plus rankings of who the most explosive offense looks to be in 2023. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus here on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, big fan of the show. Love watching you guys. I was just wondering, if the Browns season doesn't go as planned and they don't win a lot of games, I was just wondering if Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, would they be let go and be replaced? Because I just feel like every year we get so hyped and then the season just doesn't go our way. And I want this year for us to win a Super Bowl and to prove the whole league wrong. And I was just wondering how you feel about that.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Brad, there's clearly high expectations. Jimmy Haslam as much said so. But you have to tell me why. Is there a lot of injuries? Is there? I think for the first time in his ownership, Jimmy Haslam kind of likes what he has in a general manager and a head coach. He'd like it a lot more if they were in the playoffs more often, but.
Yeah, that goes a long way, and I'm sure that the voice of Paul DePodesta and his opinion on these guys matters as well. Look, I like Andrew Berry. I like what he's done. I think there is a clear vision. I think they have added talent, but barring injuries to DeShaun Watson, Amari Cooper, Myles Garrett type players, if it's just your standard nicks and bruises here and there that everyone deals with, I'll be honest. I think the answer is yes. I think the answer is, Stefanski could be a midseason departure if things don't go very well. They'll probably let the GM finish out the year. But yeah, like both guys, have heard good things about both guys. But I think there is zero patience. And I get, Haslam finally being patient and liking his guys would be great. But you have the most expensive roster in the NFL this year and next year. You've kind of gone, not all in, but you really have pushed your chips in. I don't think they need to win the Super Bowl, but if they miss the playoffs, I'd be surprised if they're there in 2024.
Yeah, absolutely fair, without question. It is. It's time to win. He's opened up the checkbook and has not complained about it. This is from Yardbarker, projecting the most explosive offenses in 2023 from first to worst. 1, they have the Chiefs. 2, they have the Bills. 3, they have the Eagles. They have the Browns at 15. Browns are a major wild card dependent on DeShaun Watson's ability to rebound. Team has given Watson a couple more receiving options, including Elijah Moore. So there are no excuses for a lack of improvement. I get what they're saying. 15 is kind of low. Middle of the pack is kind of low. Best offensive line, probably the best running back, certainly in the top 2 or 3. I think they're a little higher than that.
With you 100%. I mean, I think the potential is there to be a top 5. If we're talking explosiveness, simply the ability to create chunk plays. They should be a top 5 team, in that conversation or viewed that way. Where even, we just mentioned a million different names, but even a David Njoku is a guy that at tight end can break off a big gainer, unlike most players at that position. You mentioned Nick Chubb, where he's due for a couple 60, 80-yard rushes here and there. Yeah, if we're ignoring or just simply focusing on not sustaining drives, not red zone efficiency, yada, yada, just the ability to create chunk plays, they should be at the very, very top of the list by the end of the year.
Do you think that – I don't think we've seen much of what this offense will look like in the preseason. I think by design they're like, all right, let's do this and see what we get here. I think this offense will look, I don't want to say drastically, I think there will be a noticeable difference once they take the field against the Bengals.
I agree. I think, a lot of teams obviously keep their cards close to the vest and don't show much during the preseason, but it's been very generic and kind of milquetoast from my perspective in Cleveland in particular. And I think it really is trying to see these skill sets of certain players. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is not quite like a DeShaun Watson. He throws very, very hard, doesn't really have a lot of touch, and then he obviously wants to take off a good bit. All things I think will continue to improve, and I am high on him developing into at least a good backup quarterback. But stylistically right now, not a very similar player. There's no Amari Cooper equivalent or anything like that on this team. I think we just kind of saw, hey, run through the motions, see these guys as athletes, stay healthy, all those things. I think week 1 against Cincinnati, especially against a good defense like theirs, with Lou Anarumo at the helm, a defensive coordinator, they were saving a whole lot of tricks in the bag for that game.
Didn't see as much. Do you expect? I expect some run-pass options, some RPOs. I didn't really see that, and I think Watson's pretty good at it.
I could not agree with you more. Yeah, I think you will see more of that, and I do think, just the threat of a Chubb handoff and then just an Amari Cooper quick slant with DeShaun Watson and his ability to flick the wrist and get the ball out quickly. And that's dynamic. That's a hard thing to defend, even thinking about it. And now that you mentioned, I really don't know if I saw a lot of that. We know we're going to see a bunch of play action from Kevin Stefanski. I don't really remember seeing a whole lot of pre-snap motion, but I bet we see a whole lot of that with guys like Elijah Moore, Marquise Goodwin, etc. I think all those wrinkles and the misdirection is going to get cranked up to 11 starting in week 1.
This one is from NFL.com, projecting win share leaders among non-quarterbacks. Win share equals a number of times a player impacts first downs and touchdowns that lead to wins or losses, either by creating first downs or touchdowns on offense or by preventing them with the defense. So number 1 in the NFL, Justin Jefferson, 2.34 win share. Number 2, Nick Chubb, 2.31 win share. Again, that's on offense. First 5 years as a pro, Chubb has never averaged fewer than 5 yards per carry. With Kareem Hunt's departure this offseason, 27-year-old should get even more of the workload. Running behind a stout offensive line, Chubb could enjoy best season yet. And I'd take it a step further, Brad. I'd say running with 3 wide receiver sets and not 2 tight ends and opening it up is going to make him more effective too.
Absolutely. When you spread the defense out, you get lighter boxes to run against, and we've seen Stefanski and a lot of these similar offenses really weaponize that, and that is going to be a focal point. I would imagine they did not have the personnel to pull that off, and they obviously had 2 solid tight ends or 3 solid tight ends for stretches. But I agree. I think you see more of that. And that in turn leads to the freer room for Nick Chubb to operate in. And then also, if DeShaun Watson does return, even if it's 90% of DeShaun Watson, defenses are not going to cheat up on runs. You're not going to have safeties and linebackers biting, as often. Everything should be even easier for the guy that, if he does accomplish the 5 yards per carry again, would be the first running back in NFL history with at least 100 rushes to average at least 5 yards per carry in 6 NFL seasons.
All right, defense, same thing, win shares. Number 1 in the NFL was Nick Bosa with 2.39. Number 2, Myles Garrett, 2.388. So he's number 2 by 0.02. And again, Garrett, much like Nick Chubb, the new offense, DeShaun Watson spreading it out, set up to succeed. Think about what Myles Garrett has done with the guys that have played around him, and think about Jim Schwartz setting him up to succeed and how big of a factor he can be.
Yeah, I really think, look, we say a lot of positives, and I'm obviously high on the football team. I'm not just saying that because I'm on the show. Of all the things we talked about, Myles Garrett having a Defensive Player of the Year caliber season is one that is, a very high level of confidence opinion. I mean, it's just everything is set up for him to succeed. He has never had the supporting cast he has, both on the back end and in his actual defensive line unit around him. And then I think going to Jim Schwartz, we've seen the guy time and time again put guys in positions to succeed and have them be effective at what they do best. I think Garrett's going to have a special season this year.
I'm anxious to see it. Didn't get to see him at all in preseason, but you saw some of the guys flashing, and that style plays right into Myles Garrett's strengths. Brad Spielberger, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Brad.
Thanks for having me.
Brad Spielberger, make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff on Pro Football Focus. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.